Hi, this is Janine Miller, and you are watching Pieces of Victory. Today, we have on our show Colton Schrag. Colton is a survivor of a lockdown residential program called Agape Boarding School, located in Missouri. He's in the midst of writing a book. He spoke and gave his testimony in front of legislation. He was also on Dateline. He is well respected amongst the survival community, and he is bravely here to tell his story of the abuse that he endured for years. Please welcome to the show, Colton Schrag.
I'm Lester Holt. Tonight on Dateline, a secret too long in the shadows. One woman's courageous fight to bring it to light.
My parents were supposed to help these kids. You would expect this to be a good Christian place. No parent would have sent their child there knowing what happened.
What was it like in there?
It was hell. I was sexually abused.
There?
Yes, sir. I felt like I was nothing.
There were numerous concerns about abuse going on at this facility. My dad would pick a girl up by her neck, throw her to the ground.
He would trip you and shove you.
Knock her out.
Yes, sir.
I mean it.
I just posted it to TikTok.
Knock her out.
It just blew up.
These allegations need to be looked into.
How could I do this to my child? Thinking I was helping her.
Your parents deny everything. They said none of that stuff is true.
What was going on was wrong. Something needed to be done.
Coming up, fresh allegations of abuse from boys.
I'd watch him grab students and chuck them to a wall.
And a desperate move to alert the police.
I tried to tell him, like, man, they're beating us.
And the cop didn't believe you.
Yeah.
When Dateline continues.
Amanda began hearing from former students of Agape, the boys' religious reform school where her dad used to work. Colton Schrag remembered him very well.
I'd watch him grab students and chuck them to a wall, grab them by the neck and slam them on the rocks outside, get in their face yelling and screaming.
Boyd denied that, but Amanda listened and remembered her childhood at Agape, watching boys being dragged off to a room known as the Padded Palace.
When you open the door, it would go into this weird, dark, carpeted room, and that was the restraint room. And then all you would see is later these boys were being drugged back down from this room, and they're all bloody and bruised.
We talked to a dozen former Agape students and 4 former employees who told us they witnessed staff mistreating kids over a number of years. Agape did not respond to our requests for comment. On its website, it states its staff doesn't participate in corporal punishment.
Colton, it is so nice to have you on the show, Pieces of Victory. It is such an honor to have you and tell your story about what happened at Agape Boarding School. Do you want to start from the beginning? What caused your parents to send you to this lockdown residential program?
So I went to Agape twice when I was 12, and then again when I was like 14 and a half, 15. So I was adopted from an abusive home. I was adopted at 7. My birth parents were on drugs, highly abusive, every way possible. So I guess I was just too much to handle when I was with my adopted parents anyways. Went to my first facility when I was like 8 and a half. Fast forward a few years, went to Agape. I was told I was going to a summer camp with horses and stuff like that, or a summer camp type place. So that's where we went to Agape. When I first walked in there, I realized it wasn't like a summer camp. They checked us in, gave me a guide, shaved my head, put me in an orange shirt. And
Sorry, how old were you? 14 years old at this?
This was 12, so this was my first time there.
12.
Yeah, 12 or 13, just about 13.
And what could have possessed your parents to send you to? I mean, this is a reform school.
Yeah, I guess I needed to reform at 12 or 13. I mean, I had a temper as a kid, but to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why I ended up there at 12 or 13. I mean, I knew I had some of my own issues, typical 12, 13-year-olds. And I did have a temper, but it was getting pretty decently under control at the time.
Did they try to do therapy?
I mean, I did all kinds of things: counseling, therapy, other schools. I think it was just easier for me to get sent away. My parents didn't really have to deal with me. They just had to cut a check every month for somebody else to deal with me. 12 and a half, 13, I really didn't have very much problems. Wasn't even considered a troubled teen in my own books. But that's where it all began, is when I went there. Agape had a lot of hardcore dudes. You know, there was a lot of gang members and drug dealers, and there wasn't a whole lot of preppy kids like you see now. And so at 13, I'm like a sponge. I'm soaking all of this information up. And I remember one student, he used to sit there and educate me on like drugs and type of gangs and certain cliques inside gangs, all kinds of stuff about the street. Wow. And one other kid had asked him, why do you always teach him that? And the kid responded with, well, he's going to need to know it to survive here. So
that's awful.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had seen a lot happen there. I got restrained one time. Wasn't that bad, I guess you could say. I mean, I still was slammed to the ground and had 3 or 4 dudes on me. Lasted about 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
That's
I had seen
being slammed on the ground. This is highly abusive.
It is abusive, I agree. But there's worse times than that. So to me, that one's not very relevant. I mean, it's definitely relevant, but I don't know. But anyway, so I went through the program the first time. Saw a lot of bad stuff. Watched a lot of the older boys get, you know, what they call the drastic elbow, or slammed against walls, practically beat up by staff members. Didn't really happen to me much. Well, then I get told I'm going home. So my parents told me I was going home permanently. I was like, finally, I get to go home.
How long were you locked up in there?
18 months, I think.
18 months. During that 18-month period, were you allowed to talk to your parents?
Yeah, I talked to them, I think, once a month, or maybe every 2 weeks. I was allowed to write letters. I saw my parents 3 times in that period, I think. I think it was 3. It might have been less, but at least 2 to 3 times.
How is that supposed to help family relationships?
It doesn't, but it is what it is.
And the letters, of course, monitored. But
they read them.
Doesn't know.
They really, you know, they read them when they came in. They read them out. They said anything bad, hinted towards anything, they'd rip them up and make you rewrite it, or just punish you, put you on the wall or something.
Do you want to explain the wall?
Yeah, the wall at Agape is where you get told to stand on the wall. You put your nose on the wall. You're standing there, hands behind your back. Can't look off, can't look away, or you'll get more of a punishment, or you'll get more push-ups, sit-ups, 8-count bodybuilders. Essentially, anytime you're in the dining hall, you're standing on the wall. So for meals, you're standing on the walls.
Stretch. What if I wanted to stretch my back or stretch?
There's no stretching.
No stretching.
You just stood there with your hands behind your back.
I wouldn't be able to sit down?
No, unless you had to use the restroom, you could sit down. I watched kids stand on the wall. I mean, I knew a couple kids. I stood on the wall for over 2 months one point in time on my second time there. And if the staff members had a bone to pick with you, you would stand up during church, you'd stand up during school. You would essentially stand up all day until you went to bed. So until they just decided they weren't going to mess with you anymore. So that was one of the punishments. I don't remember where we were going with that, but anyways.
That's okay. I'm just talking about how torturous this is. I mean, it's just not the wall and that's it. I mean, this is...
No, I mean, you're standing there staring at the time they had green paper wallpaper, and that's what you looked at. That was it.
That's awful. So you're out of school, you're out of communicating with other children, and you're just up against this wall all day, and you were against this wall for 2 months, and you couldn't sit down.
My second time I was, we can get into that later. It kind of goes with another part of the story.
Sure.
That first time, though, like I said, I was told I was going to go home. And so I was excited. Finally, I get to go home. Well, when I get home, my dad was like, oh, you're not going home. You're just going to a different place. And I remember thinking, like, all right, you're going to pay for that. So everything that I learned that first time that we just talked about, I said, I'm going to go out there and do it. I'm going to go fight. I'm going to try to join a gang. I'm going to try to do all kinds of stuff. So that's where my second time at Agape is more significant. because a lot more took place.
So basically, these camps are training kids to use drugs.
Yes and no. I think anytime, I mean, it's like a juvenile detention center. You're not working with the best, right?
Okay.
So yeah, like it's like juvie. You're not messing with the cream of the crop, right? You're dealing with kids that have gotten in some type of trouble, whether in school, the law. That's how all these systems are. And then you have kids that don't deserve to be there for one at all. So that's what I learned. I learned all kinds of bad stuff. So I remember that second time when my dad lied to me. He was like, "You're going to another facility." I remember thinking like, "All right, you're gonna pay for that," and then like being so angry and hateful. Went to this other place, started selling weed, started fighting, started skipping school, started hanging out with like gang members. I never joined the gang, but I would hang out with them. Got in all kinds of trouble with them. And so when I got kicked out of that other place, I went home for like maybe a month and a half, and my parents, they're like, "We're just gonna send you back to Agape." I had already told them about some of the abuse and some of the stuff that went down there, but they chalked it up as "You're a troubled teen. We can't believe you. That place is great, and at least you can't get kicked out." So the only reason why I went back the second time is because Agape wouldn't kick me out. And I definitely tried. So
That's awful.
yeah, so essentially that's why I went back, is because I was going to be there till I was 18. So the second time I went back day after Christmas, December 26, 2006. I think I was almost 15, something like that. And that's kind of where it all started. That's where most of my advocating Agape story really starts. I mean, yeah, I was there the first time, but not a whole lot took place. I was kind of in the shadows, behind the scenes. So I remember when I got there, the director at the time came up to me and was like, "Well, looks like Colton Schrag came back." Little old Colton, and I looked at him and I said, "I don't think you understand. I'm not the same kid that I was when I was here a while back." And that was it. So the history started. Day after Christmas, I get assigned to a buddy, I think, or maybe I was a floating yellow shirt since I'd already been there, and just started seeing kind of all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Like I'd start seeing kids get put through walls more often. When I say put through a wall, I literally mean put through drywall. Their bodies were put through the walls. I've seen the heads go through drywall, and I've seen staff members grab a kid by the neck and pick them up over them and slam them on the ground, start kneeing them and elbowing, and then like 4 or 5 staff members jump on them in a restraint tactic. So I started seeing all this happening, and I remember getting more angry, more bitter, and I had ran my mouth to somebody. I don't know exactly what I said, but a staff member grabbed me by the neck and slammed me against the floor. I think we were right outside the dining hall, so it was right on the concrete, and just started like sliding my face in the concrete. And then they called staff and had like 3 or 4 others on top of me and restrained me right there from the dining hall. Then they carried me to the intake room. I think that restraint lasted like 2 hours because I was just fighting them. Well, after that took place, they put me back in an orange shirt and assigned me a guide, which was a student that was in charge of me, making sure I wasn't going to break the rules, which at that point in time didn't really matter because I already knew the rules. So it was just trying to punish me as much as they could. And I had mentioned to this guy that said, "Why do we let them do this to us? Why don't we just take broomsticks and take the dude out?" Well, my guy told on me, and because I had threatened to beat up a staff member, I ended up getting like every punishment Agape had to offer. So I was in, standing on the wall. I was on no talking. I was on, we call it retread status. I was back in orange, segregated. I didn't go to school. I didn't sit down. And then about the same time, 2 other kids, Hispanic kids, had got put back in orange shirts for similar stuff, talking about similar things. Well, it was us 3 back in orange, and we kind of bonded. We were there together. We kind of grew up together, and so we essentially decided, you know what, screw it. Like, what more could they possibly do to us? Like, they've already put hands on us. We're already at the lowest of the low in the school, and so we just decided we were going to rebel and just be as bad as possible and make it miserable, make the staff members earn their checks. And our day consisted of getting up. By this time, we had moved into the new dorm, so we slept right in the front of the barracks, or I say barracks, but dorm. So our day consisted of getting up, making our beds, putting our orange shirts down and immediately starting like physical exercise. Whether it was like we were duck walking or bear crawling to wherever we needed to be, push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, the typical Agape life. Bible reading before breakfast and chores. And then they went to school and we went to, I guess they tried to make it like a boot camp. So they'd have usually one staff member, sometimes two staff members, depending on who it was. We'd go walk around the property out there on the dirt roads, which there's a lot. We'd bear crawl, we'd duck walk, and we got kind of sick of doing that, so we would just refuse to do it. Like, no, I'm not doing it no more. So then the staff members would restrain us more. I think in that period of time, leading up to the last story I'll tell you on this topic, all three of us had probably been restrained 20 to 30 times. And when I say restrained, it wasn't because we were out of control per se. There was nobody in harm, us or the staff. We just refused to do what they were going to say. So they would grab us by the shirts or the necks or the shoulders, slam us onto the ground, either on the gravel, the grass, tile, didn't really matter where. And then they would put their knees in the back of our necks and heads and call more staff, and the staff would come up and apply pressure on our arms and legs. And every time we flinched or screamed or something, they would go worse and do it more and more. So this kind of leads up to where I really kind of set my name in stone. So after about 20 of those situations happening, it comes up to about April 20th, 2007. All three of us are still in orange. We've been in orange shirts for like 2 months, maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And we decided that, why don't we just run away? Hold on, leading back. So we were up at the very back corner of the property, and they were making us do these things called little bunny foo-foos, and they decided to make us. So we started screaming it. Well, eventually all three of us got restrained pretty good right up there on that back corner house. Well, it was after that day we decided, like, why don't we just run away? There's three of us. Usually it's one of them. If whoever gets caught by that staff member, the other two will turn around and beat the staff member up, and then all three of us can get out of there. I said, they can't catch all three of us. That was our plan. We were going to do it. Not sure when we were going to do it, but we had set in stone, like, we're waiting for an opportunity. And 420 rolls around. We go to the barracks or the dorms, and this kid Roland rolls a fake joint, 420, associated marijuana. And then we just acted like we were what they were doing. We could just assume he was getting restrained. He was a bigger kid, kind of dumb, but
so basically
wild.
Being a smart aleck, and
more or less, yeah.
They're restraining kids for being a smart aleck.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, sometimes we get in fist fights or we swing on them, but doesn't matter. We were doing it because they were putting hands on us.
Right.
So they restrained this kid for
retaliation against child abuse is what it is.
Exactly. It is.
Call it like it is.
No, it is. It's abuse, regardless. That anytime you put hands on a kid and they walk away with bruises or anything, or it's not justified, it's abuse.
It sounds like they were creating a violent environment.
Agape 100%
hierarchy
made me more violent. Agape made me more violent, especially as the years went on. So anyways, they restrained this guy for like 3 hours. Well, then I get woken up around like 11:30 at night by the captains and the single staff. They say, hey, you need to get out of bed. Come with us. I said, why? I didn't do anything. And they said, come out of bed. They want to talk to you. So I get hauled outside of the bed, outside the dorm in front of at the time it was the old learning center and in the gymnasium. When I walk out there, I see Roland's got like blood on his face. His eyes are swollen. His shirt, is just shredded, like they had been throwing him around. He's kind of whimpering, like he just took a beating. As soon as I get out there, the director says, what does "are you down" mean? And I played stupid. I knew what he was talking about. They pretty much beat the truth out of Roland. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he punches me in the face. Not open-handed, no elbow, a closed fist punch to the face. I swung on him. He hit me again. I swung again. He hit me again. And finally, another staff member, there was 4 of them out there, just grabbed me and slammed me into the wall and into the tile. Actually, I think it was concrete before they tiled it. But anyways, he put his knee on the back of my head and like upper shoulders. And the director was like, go get Jesse. So staff member walks in, goes get Jesse. And as soon as he walks out there, he doesn't even get asked the question. the director punches him right in the face. Gives him a big black eye.
Oh my God.
He essentially just beat all three of us up. Gives him a big black eye. They slam him to the ground, and that director proceeded to, it was like a pinball machine, go back and forth between Roland, me, and Jesse, kicking us in the ribs, kicking us in the arms, calling us names, telling us we're pieces of, calling us terrorists for trying to beat up staff members in a Christian organization, how we should be thrown in prison because the world doesn't deserve, we don't deserve to be in a world of freedom, all kinds of stuff. And then after about 5, maybe 10 minutes of that, and then of course the whole time we have staff members on the back of us mashing our face into the tile or concrete, whichever was there. Then he says, "Get up, take your clothes off." So we take our clothes off. He says, "Take everything but your boxers or your underwear, strip down. That's what you're gonna wear from here on out. When you get to the dorms, strip your beds. You don't get blankets, you don't get pillows, you don't get sheets. You can sleep on a mattress, and you're lucky you get that. Until I say so." He said, "We'll get you bathrobes in the morning." So that's what we did. Stripped our sheets, and then that next morning.
And it was probably so cold too. It
was April in Missouri, so it wasn't that cold. It was almost warm. But it is nighttime though, so it does get cold. So I'm sure we were cold at some point in time. The next morning we get to the shower bay. They issue us our robes, bathrobes, and Agape Airs. So Agape Airs were like a size 13 shoes with the toes cut, the tongues cut out and the laces removed, and then they would cut a slit into the toe. So essentially, you were just dragging a pair of shoes, not safe to walk in or nothing. And that story right there I decided that I was no longer if they were ever gonna put hands on me, we're gonna fight. Because I'm not just gonna roll over. I'm not gonna let that happen anymore. And so that's how we did it. When we took our punishment, the next day we're in front of you were there, right? At the rally?
I was at the rally.
So where that sign is, there's a little green pasture to the right. If you're looking at the building, we were in there doing something. I don't think there was grass yet. It might have been grass. But I remember looking at Jesse and opening my robe and showing him the bruises that were on my stomach and chest area.
Oh.
And I asked him, I was like, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Man, I think my ribs are broken." And or at least bruised, because it was hard to breathe. And then Jesse opened his robe and showed me his bruises. And of course he had a big black eye. Roland had a big black eye. I had a cut under my cheek right here because of what had happened. So they
on board, and they couldn't take you to the doctor. I just want the audience to get an idea of what's going on in this place.
They wouldn't have took us to the doctor because then questions would have been asked. And actually, after that night, I wasn't allowed to receive any letters for probably a year and a half or a phone call. I didn't get a phone call for another year and a half.
That's awful.
Neither did Jesse and Roland, right? We didn't have any way to reach out. So if we wrote a letter, they would take them, but they wouldn't turn them in.
Do you know on the website they have an MD on board?
Yeah, I see that. We never saw a doctor when I was there.
Inside this place regarding medical? Is there a medical physician on board?
No, not when I was there. I think their MD is just one that owns the urgent care in town, and maybe he does some work. I don't really know the situation there.
Sure.
I just know when I was a student, in 2003 all the way to even 2009 and 10, there was no medical staff as far as a certified licensed medical staff. I think they had a person go through an EMT course, so they were a certified EMT, and they might have went through CPR and first aid, but maybe. So there was no their medical staff that they have now, that they issue pills, whatever prescriptions we have or any medicine we may need, or that take us to doctors. They're just normal staff members that, any green shirt staff member could have issued medicine out. So there's nothing legit about medical anyways. But they wouldn't have took us to the hospital anyways, even if we were jacked up, because they just wouldn't have took us.
And so you're showing each other your bruises, your cuts, any ribs that are broken.
Well, I don't know for sure if my ribs were broken. I just knew it was very hard to breathe, and I had bruises on the left side of my body.
That's awful. So you were gathered together. You were showing each other.
Kind of. We were during like our day where everybody was in school, but we were forced to walk around the property or do whatever. And I think I kind of just like subtly showed Jesse and asked him if we would have got caught talking, we'd have been in trouble. So
Right.
I'm sure it had to be hidden and stuff. But
That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, there's other kids that remember that story. They don't know exactly the details because they hauled us. I mean, they did that to us a bunch of times. They would haul us out in the middle of the night when everybody's asleep, and then that would repeat, or they would just slam us around in the gym. And
Browntown, when you started doing all of this, you want to explain to the audience about
Browntown. So it's funny that you bring that up. So Browntown was non-existent up until a situation happened with me and a few other guys. Then they decided to bring brown shirts, and we just called them retreads, orange shirts. So that was the same thing. Well, this kid we were hauling rocks one day doing manual. It was on a Saturday, I believe. We were hauling rocks just back and forth, pointless work, had nothing to do, just for us to do something. And this kid, relatively popular kid, relatively good kid. I mean, never had issues. So it was the director. It was his son and son-in-law at the time. I think he might have mouthed off. Well, both those guys picked this kid, and the tallest this kid ever got was like 5'3", and that may be pushing it. And whoever listens to this will know who I'm talking about if they were there. You might have talked back on this work crew there by the dumpster. They both picked him up over their heads and slammed him on the rocks and just started restraining him right there. And when
on the rocks?
Yeah, that happened all the time. I mean, for us, it was nothing new to see because it was so consistent. But something about that one pissed the entire student body off. And normally we would have to sit down and face away. I remember some kids did. Other kids just stood there just staring at it like we all had the same idea. Like we should go get this kid off the ground. But we don't know how to do it, or we don't want to get we don't know. So anyways, they call staff. There's like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 staff members on this dude, big 300-pound, 400-pound men on this little 5'2" guy that maybe weighed 130 pounds at the most. And he's screaming because he's in pain. They're mashing his arms, putting his face in the gravel, his legs. So I think us students, a few of us were getting kind of antsy because I know some of us started yelling stuff out and like getting kind of rowdy. Well, then they decided they were going to haul him into the building. So they just picked all them staff members, picked this kid up and like by his arms and legs and like escorted him to the intake room where they finished off the restraint where no one could see it. So that kind of pissed a bunch of us kids off, and we decided we were going to try to do a riot at nighttime and just beat up the staff members, steal their keys, and try to steal their vehicles and just run away. And I think we had recruited officially like 10 people, and I think another 40 or 50 students knew about it. They just weren't going to be involved, but they weren't going to say nothing. One kid told on us the night it was supposed to happen. They brought in all the male staff. I think there were some guys from town that they had brought in, some people that were affiliated with them, and they pretty much all of our names were brought out. And there was about 40 or 50 of us they put back in orange shirts, and then that's where the brown shirts come from. Is they wanted to separate us to know exactly who the ones that were a part of this was. So they brought a bunch of brown shirts in the next couple of days, put us in it, and for like I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they had all 50 of us just pretty much in the corner where there's amphitheater is now, where they do their little fireworks show and singing. It was just an open field of dirt and maybe some grass. We would walk, bear crawl in circles for hours. Like I'm talking about 8 to 10 hours, just in circles all day long, just bear crawling.
10 hours?
Yeah, for I think the first 3 weeks they had all of us in there, and then they decided to give some kids yellow shirts that just knew about it and didn't tell on us. Gave them all yellow shirts, and then there was about 9 of us that stayed in brown shirt for another. I think I was in brown shirt that time for another like month, so almost 2 months. And then a couple other kids were in brown shirts for like 4 months, and all we did was that all day long. We duck walked everywhere, and they made our lives hell. Well, that introduced the new Browntown, so that's where Browntown came in. They tried to make it like a military boot camp. They'd make those guys and kids march. They weren't allowed to go to school. They had to stand up on a table with their knees against a bench and staring at their Bibles anytime. I think in church, On Sundays and Wednesdays, they were allowed to sit down, but on the chapel services, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, they would stand in the back. And then the only time they were really allowed to sit down was when they went to bed. Their meals consisted of a half a bowl of plain Cheerios, one peanut butter sandwich, and a plate of salad. Not even a big plate of salad, like a normal small portion of salad with 1 cup of water in between it, or for each meal. I don't even think our cereal had milk in it, if I remember right. So that's what the brown shirts ate, which is a form of abuse. Anytime you seclude or change food from one student and the other population, it means you're abusing that student, not feeding them properly.
And not only that, but they're doing all this physical work and burning off so many calories. They're not getting enough calories in the day.
No, you weren't. You also didn't get enough water. I bet the entire time I was at Agape, I was probably had a lack for water. So we were allowed to drink water during the meals, but you had to get permission from a staff member to drink water out of the fountain, and they'd only let you drink like 3 to 5 seconds. So when you went to the shower bays where you usually drank your most water in the mornings and evenings, because you knew like once we went to the dorms, you weren't allowed to drink any water. And if you got caught drinking water, you'd have to stand on the wall the next day.
Do you know that juvenile hall is not like this? I've done my...
Yeah, I went to juvie. Actually.
I'm glad you can tell us the difference, because I did some research on the one in LA, and the one in LA, she almost bit my head off when I asked her about do they work. No, they don't work. They go to school, and she was upset that I would even... I said, hey, I'm doing a comparison on the reform school that I was in.
Yep.
In a hall.
Yeah,
and
so
go ahead.
I was in juvie in El Paso. It was called The Point. I don't know the official name of it. We went to school from like 8 o'clock till lunchtime. Lunchtime, we had essentially good enough food. I mean, I don't remember any complaints about the food other than it being juvie food. Then we went back to school till like a normal school day, 8 hours. And, and then we went to... I guess wherever we're gonna go eat chow, ate dinner, and then the rest of the night we had free time essentially.
Could you get water whenever you wanted? Could you go to the bathroom whenever you wanted?
Yep, we could get water and use the bathroom whenever we wanted.
Could
in
you
school
get
we had to ask permission.
Class clown if you wanted to?
Yeah, in school, because we had certified teachers in school, so you could do all that. They did have times where it was like lockdown. Like at nighttime, you were supposed to stay in your bunks. And, if I remember correctly, at the Point in El Paso had like a little small dorm, like a pod, and there was probably 10 bunk beds in there, and then you had the 10, and then so on and so forth. And they were classified by like, I don't know, petty theft all the way up to violent gang members. So yeah, I mean, but they weren't in the same area. They had theirs.
That's good. They separated. Unlike
we're in Agape.
It's a mixed one.
Yeah, you have a 12-year-old in the same room as a 19-year-old.
Wow, that's freaking scary. I wanted to ask you, could you make a phone call back to juvenile hall? Could you make?
I believe so. If I remember right, we could. It's a long time ago.
Was it monitored?
I'm sure some of them were, but I do know we were allowed to write whatever we wanted as long as it wasn't like requesting drugs. They would still skim it, our letters,
right?
But they wouldn't read detail into the letters.
But if you illegal to your girlfriend, you could talk to a girlfriend, or you could talk to someone from the outside world. I just want to paint a picture for the audience.
I mean, we were even allowed to go out and play soccer and like go swimming. Wearing at Agape, like, sure, we may have played soccer a handful of times. I don't even think I went to the pool maybe twice the entire time I was there. But the swimming pool was in a concrete wall, so there was no really. You saw the sky, and that was about it, and the white walls. Soccer, if you went to go play soccer, you were trusted, and trusted enough to go out there, and you had to be with like 3 staff members. So I mean, it was. Yeah, I mean, they had their moments, I guess. Well, the point, we would just take a line, and we'd go swimming, and we'd have fun, and kids be kids, I guess.
I was just gonna say, if you have staff members there watching every move you make, I mean, you could slip up and say darn or shucky darn. I mean, I don't know what the rules were there, but we had some rules where we couldn't even say darn. And if we did, we get punished.
Yeah, exactly.
My God.
Yep. If you said God or Jesus, they were going to restrain you on the spot. You don't take the Lord's name in vain. We honestly at Agape weren't even allowed to talk without staff. So we weren't allowed to talk at all, period. If we were talking, the staff members only saw it as we were talking about running away, we were talking about beating up staff, or we were talking about having sex with staff wives and staff daughters. That's all they said we could be talking about. So if we did get caught talking, we got in trouble, put on the wall, no talking, back in the orange.
But in juvenile hall, you could talk.
Yeah, I could talk, I could draw, I could write rap songs in a notebook. Wow. But at Agape, you couldn't talk. And if you did talk, you'd have to take the student to a staff member. The staff member would have to sit there and listen to the conversation. And it had to be very, brief, hey, do you want to play this game? Or, hey, do you want to play dice? Or, hey, did you pass your test? Yes, okay, and that was it. There was no full-on conversations that were allowed there. Now, we did talk. We all learned how to be ventriloquists. You can't have 150, 175, 200 students in one room and there not be talking. So we learned how to talk without moving our mouths, tuck in our Adam's apple in so you couldn't see it, so you can get away with it. So we did definitely socialize a little bit.
Well, it's awful. I'm going to ask a question that we all know the answer to, but I just want to hear it from your mouth. If you had a choice between juvenile hall or Agape boarding school, what would you choose?
I would have went to the point 100% of the time because you had a little bit more freedom there. You didn't have no freedoms at Agape. Matter of fact, I've heard staff members even call us no Agape student would ever be worthy enough to marry my daughters.
That's awful.
Exactly.
That's awful.
Even the staff wives would treat us bad. I mean, they would come walk, the staff wife and kids would walk right in front of us. We'd have to stop 10 feet away and look down. And they would do it on purpose, just because I don't know, they just wanted the attention or felt like they were entitled to the attention.
That's awful. And this is supposed to be, let's remind the audience, a Christian boarding school.
Oh, Baptist boarding school. It's loving, right? It's supposed to be a school with a heart in the heart of Missouri.
That's awful. And it's sleep deprivation. They're malnourishing the children, sometimes starving them. They're doing hard labor, slavery, child endangerment. There's no medical attention. The list goes on. What about sexual abuse? Did you witness abuse?
I didn't see any of that. I do know that some of the students did sexually abuse other students, and we dealt with that accordingly. But I know it was never reported. I've heard of instances. I knew of one instance where a junior staff or a blue shirt had raped a student, and that was kind of swept under the rug. But I mean, as far as on a normal basis, it wasn't really a thing. I know that the kids that would come there and be openly gay were targeted by staff members. They were a couple of kids I knew were in striped shirts, which at the time when I first went there, striped shirts meant two guys were in the same gang as each other. They knew each other, so that meant you had to stay away from them. And then they later translated it into these kids are homosexuals. Put them in a striped shirt, put them on the corner. And I think we had one kid sitting on the corner for 6 months.
6 months?
Just because he was gay. And I guess the staff size, that was an abomination.
That's so awful. So it's teaching children how to hate other children, to bully other children.
Well, that's the thing is we were told
violence. Christian school.
Yeah, that's the thing. We were told that if you see this guy doing anything, you need to take care of it or restrain him or put hands on him. Essentially beat the gay out of him because.
Oh no!
Without actually being told beat the gay out of him, right?
Did you hear any of that in juvenile hall? I mean, the staff promoting hate.
I never heard the CEOs or juvie officers say something like that.
They're lowering self-esteem at Agape. In juvenile hall, I feel like it's more therapeutic. In juvenile hall,
maybe because we had counselors too in juvie,
right?
Certified counselors, I would say.
And I'm not it's perfect. I'm just
No,
saying
exactly.
compared
Well,
to.
so even Agape, if you walk in there and you don't see any of this abuse, you don't hear it, you don't know what's going on, you think it's amazing, right? It's amazing facilities. They've got exotic animals. They go to school. They I mean they have free time. I think they can talk to our staff now, so they can do this. They have a chef that cooks for them, and I will say like maybe the meals weren't like the healthiest, but they definitely fed us a lot when we were in trouble, right? Like we ate good.
Notice you said when you weren't in trouble.
Exactly, when we weren't in trouble.
The
You know,
offer.
they made
Okay.
they made pancakes in the morning, Mondays and Wednesdays. They had chocolate chips and stuff.
Right.
Fridays they had
But
chocolate chip peanut butter oatmeal.
a Snickers bar, so to speak, doesn't give them the right to abuse children.
Exactly, but they still. I mean, if you took all the abuse away, they would have been fine. The school wasn't certified or accredited, but and they had a basketball team and they had started doing like boxing and they had a rodeo at my last year there, and a wrestling team. So yeah, if you took all the abuse away, the school looks good, right? It's like a preppy school. Your parents are paying $40,000 a year to, but then you can't overlook the good doesn't overlook the bad. The bad still happened, right?
Exactly.
We were still abused there.
Right.
I was still restrained over at least 100 times, over 100 times. I was choked out by staff members. I mean, all be saved and doing well and memorizing verses. I remember
that because of the correlation of child abuse and religion, I mean, they would be playing songs in the place I was at, religious songs, and then abusing girls. So, do you have associations at times? Do you?
No, not really. So they didn't really play much music there unless it was church.
Or even
I do associate
praying or dear God, let's gather here together. I mean, when you hear this,
sometimes it makes me think of
something.
Yeah, sometimes it makes me think of like, oh man, been a while since I've heard that, or even just the phrase "do right." Sometimes I'm like, I don't really like that phrase, even though it's a good phrase, because that's what they do right, do right, do right. They had a song we sang after every church chapel service. So yeah, I mean, even that phrase kind of takes me back and makes me. I don't really get triggered, I guess, but it makes me remember, like, dang, that ties in together with that. I will say, like, when I find independent fundamental Baptist clips in the internet, like YouTube or Facebook, it automatically takes me back to Agape, and I tie both of them hand in hand because Agape believes, or they say they're not now, but back then it was independent King James fundamental Baptist, fire brimstone. That's what they jam down our throats. So anytime I see that, like House Anderson or these Bible colleges, I automatically assume these places are just as bad as this place because, I mean, it's a cult in my opinion.
Right. It definitely is a cult. And again, for the audience that doesn't know, in 1968, a monster by the name of Lester Roloff started these cults, and he started Rebecca Home for Girls, and then it branched out from there, including Circle of Hope and Agape Boarding School, also Victory Christian Academy, Genesis by the Sea, New Bethany, and the list goes on, Bethesda, and you get the whole idea.
All of them.
Connected.
It's crazy. So Agape Boarding School started out in Stockton, California. Then they moved to Othello, Washington. Government shut them down in Othello, so they moved to Missouri. So they've been in 3 different places. Been in Missouri the longest. When I went there, so Wings of Faith or Refuge of Grace was a Trinity school. So it was like a sub branch of Agape. And the director started his own. Then they decided to merge them again. And then that became what is known as Wings of Faith now. So I think it's an Agape owned property. And then all these other schools that are popping up, like Legacy Boys Academy, Masters Ranch in Couch, Missouri, or Washington, Circle of Hope with Boyd Householder. All of these people worked for Agape at one point in time. I was actually a student with all of these staff members that started their own schools and could probably go into specific stories, except for the one that Master's Ranch, because he didn't really do anything with us. So, I mean, they're all tied into Agape somehow. That's why I always call it the Father School. It's the Father School of all these places.
And that's so sad because these these monsters are getting away with child abuse. And whether they're licensed, unlicensed, religious, non-religious, it doesn't matter. They're abusing our children. There's over 100,000 across the U.S. And I wanted to talk about legislation a little bit because it seems like no matter what, these people are getting away with everything. They're not being prosecuted. There's been numerous reports.
Substantiated reports.
How many reports have been made on Agape Boarding School alone, and yet the place is still open today.
Yep. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't really talk about any of this because nobody was listening. I was of the mindset like I'm a man. I kind of have to move on and start life. I didn't have time to deal with it, and so some stuff took place in my personal life where all of this stuff started surfacing all at once, like really quickly. And I was still doing well. I wasn't going to jail or doing drugs, but just personally, like my anger was coming back. I was depressed. It just started surfacing. So I went to a counselor and started getting help. A real counselor, certified, not some that went to church for all his life.
Right.
And then just started talking to him, and all this stuff started coming out. And more I talked about it, the better I felt, like the less of the weight I had on my chest. And then to the point where I was just paying for extra sessions just to keep talking. About that same time, Amanda messaged me and asked me if I'd be willing to speak about Agape. And I told her, I said, well, I'm not sure I'm quite ready to yet, because I'm still kind of in cahoots with them as far as like I can get some good intel and whatnot. Not cahoots. I would never have been in cahoots with them. I always take the student side over staff members. There's no in cahoots. But
you were undercover, right?
Kind of, yeah. That's a better way to put it.
Want to talk about that, or can you talk about
I mean, I can. It doesn't matter. I didn't really do anything crazy. I would just hear about stuff, and then I'd call and confront them, and then they would lie to me, or they would send. I guess for years I was considered a success story for Agape because I overcame the bad side of Colton and started doing well in the program. Graduated, joined the military, started working, was going to church. So they would send parents to me and like call me as a reference. And they would ask me, these parents would ask me, do I think Agape is great for them? I said, no. I would just tell them the truth. Like, have you read the reviews? This was my speech. Well, what do you know about Agape? Have you done your research? Well, that's why I'm calling, because I've seen some stuff online. I said, okay, what do you see online? And then they would tell me a certain story. I'm like, yeah, that happened. I was there for that. Let me tell you about my time. I said, just because the school has good things about them doesn't mean the bad stuff didn't go with it.
That's right. And so basically it backfired on Agape because felt like you were the biggest role model. And yes, that's because you chose to go that route.
Yeah, and I think I did tell one parent to send this kid there, but it was like he needed to be somewhere quickly because he was like they were scared for their lives. And I was like, well, get him somewhere. And I do regret that because I was like, you don't want the mom and dad to be so scared in tears while they're talking. And I looked at it as like, well, if he goes here, then he can't. There's no way he's going to possibly hurt his parents or hurt them. And I told him, I said, once you get him there, start looking for other programs.
Right.
So it was kind of like
out, like in other words, it would just be a holding.
Yeah, I never intended for that kid to be there for longer than 2 months or something. But I do feel bad about that. But I was kind of like, you have to protect the parents if the kid's that dangerous, and he had attacked the dad a few times. And so I still feel bad that I had to take out one person there probably. But I think about all the last 10 years that I was able to deter from it, so.
Awesome. And plus kids say, hey, this isn't good.
Exactly.
Not cool. This is just for an emergency and get him out right away. So don't beat yourself up over.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was doing that with Amanda while she was doing Circle of Hope. I said, look, I'll do whatever I need to help you. Talk to whoever. Actually, we did that in 2018 when the state trooper from Missouri was investigating. So I've been friends with Amanda for a long time. And then I was I wasn't scared of Agape or anything like that. Never been scared of them. I just had built such a good reputation for myself the last 10 years, 11 years of like who I became. And so nobody, no, not even like my family kind of knew, and a couple, like 2 or 3 close friends may have knew I went to a boarding school and that it was pretty jacked up as far as like they used to beat us up. And I never went into detail. And so when like the news articles started dropping, I was really nervous to have my name out there on who would read it as far as like people, my coworkers and people that I've built, a good relationship that doesn't know the bad side of me. And then I just, one day it clicked. I was just sitting there. I was like, you know what? Screw it. This is who I am. I mean, I can't hide the troublemaker or the kid I was or what I went through. It does no good. I've been hiding it for 10 years, and then it surfaced, and then it went really bad. So I told the reporter, I said, use my name. I said, at least when the other students read it that know me, maybe they'll be able to speak out and do their stories, or even just heal. Right, the big process is healing for me. I just wish I could have healed 11 years ago and not last year or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's a lot of time that I could have been doing something positive.
But maybe it's part of the journey and part of the experience, and you can help someone else who is going through similar experiences because
and that's always been my heart. So I always told myself, like, maybe that's why I plugged myself into a youth group at church. It was like, well, I know what I grew up in. I was abused essentially for 17 and a half years, physically abused. My adopted parents were good people. They never did put hands on me. They treated me the best they could, I think. But prior to that, 7 years, I was abused from the day I was born until I was taken out by the state, and then like the whole teenage years, right? If you think about Agape, right. And I don't say that for people to feel sorry for me. I don't have that kind of mindset. I don't have a victim mindset or anything like that.
Right.
Like I don't like the word survivor, right? To me, I'm a fighter. I'm gonna fight for what I think is right. Fight for kids and everything. So I fought for myself. I fought to survive, I guess you could say. But I never just rolled over. That's why I don't like the word victim. Not saying that victims just roll over, but it doesn't hold the value to what I hold myself. Like right. I didn't just like I didn't make it easy for them anyway. So anyways, I always told myself like, well, if I can just help one more kid, like whether it's because he's like trying to do drugs in school or maybe gang banging or he's getting be abused at home, if I can just go to that youth group and help one kid and show him that there's another way, like kind of it gets better. I just don't know when it gets better, but it does get better. You don't have to turn that route. So, I mean, I should have been dead or in prison. I should have been the typical statistic that beats his kids and beats his women, beats everybody, super violent, been in and out of jail. I should have been that statistic, but I've never been that. I've never been to jail. I don't hurt anybody. I'm not violent at all. I mean, I could be violent. I've had to live it, but that's not my, like, I don't think like that. I actually am a big old softie, if you really think about it. Like, I care so much about kids that if I could just help one kid, I'd go relive the first 17 years of my life over and over again just to help one more kid.
Oh.
And that's always been my mindset. When I was 18, 19, all the way to 28, 29, maybe I had to grow a little bit more before all of it surfaced and healed. And then I could speak in front of people, adults, and so like, that's what I told them. I said, use my name. Somebody out there is going to be better because they were able to read a story about me because they knew what I went through, knew what they saw me go through. And I wasn't, and to be honest, I've had a lot of former students that I go to school with or went to school with that I haven't talked to for like 10 or 12 years reach out to me on Facebook Messenger and call me and like, man, thank you for speaking out. I feel like I can heal. Thank you. I was in tears with you while you were talking on the podcast. Nobody believed us. And we just, and the same story is the same. No one believed us.
Right. They can identify.
We just had to move on. Mm-hmm. And that alone was worth me speaking out with the Trouble podcast. But I decided that I didn't want to just talk about it. I never wanted to really just talk about it. I wanted to actively try to do something to change the system, whatever way possible. So if I had to write hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters to the state of Missouri, then I was going to do that. And if I had to get lawyers and write a bunch of emails to lawyers, I was going to do that. So I found one that would take cases from the guys leaving now and the girls that were just now recently leaving to sue. And so that's what we did. We found one in Missouri. We found, Carrie Engel was able to, the state legislator in Missouri was able to reach out to us, and we were able to get over 100, I believe, student testimonies from Agape into the hands of the state legislators, and then we were able to influence a committee to be held, and then two new bills, one new bill and then a revision of an old bill. And I don't remember the name of the first bill exactly, Child Act, Notification Act. But anyways, we were advocating for licensing in the programs, because I think if you're going to be able to house any amount of kids, you have to have a state license, and then you need to be able to have licensed teachers, counselors, medical staff, right? You need to be able to have professional people involved. And then on top of that, the state needs to be able to come in and audit, do health inspections, fire inspections, safety inspections, all of that stuff. So that's why I wanted licensing. I wasn't able to get that. We weren't able to get that, but we were able to get it to where they had to be regulated, as far as all the schools had to register with the state, the Department of Health, Child Services. They've got to send a picture copy, a name, and a point of contact of every student within a certain amount of days. I think it's 3 days, to these Department of Health and to Social Services. And so we were able to influence that bill, which was introduced in December, I think December 18th or 17th. And then I believe it should be signed into law as an emergency act January 6th, which means
that's awesome.
Sign that the second it's passed is the second it becomes law, which means all of this stuff takes place. We're able to get federal background checks on all these schools, so all the employees have to have federal background checks. All kinds of good stuff. It's not everything we wanted, but it's some things we wanted to start, which is good, because we need something to be done.
They really need to regulate, but they need to prosecute these monsters.
I agree. And, that's going to be the hard part, especially of my generation, because there was no video cameras, no recordings, nothing. There was no way for us to reach out. We're too old to even have a civil suit. So it's going to be the younger generation of Agape, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2022. These kids are going to be the ones that have to report them to the police and report them to CPS and start and do that, which is why we tried to get as much resources readily available for them. As soon as they walk out the doors, we can just email this person, email this person, email this person. That's because where
they're in the brainwash state at that point.
And that's why we try to actively pursue these kids. And maybe it's weird, maybe it's not, but we didn't have people that cared like these newer students have now. Maybe they cared, maybe they didn't, but we didn't have social media like we did, or like we do now. We didn't have a group. There wasn't a strong amount of ex-former students that have healed and that are actively trying to help other kids get that process going quicker, so they don't have to suffer for 10, 20 years like we did. And I say suffer, the mind holds the most scars. Your body can heal, but for me, the mind holds the most scars. I still have nightmares, and they're pretty brutal. I can't be snuck up on. If I fall asleep in a room and no one's in there, you're fine. If you come in there and wake me up, I go into attack mode. So I still struggle with these things, and I have to force myself to fight it.
I have a question for you about PTSD. Now, I understand you were in the military.
So I didn't do anything of equivalence in the military to have any PTSD.
Okay.
I do have clinically, and I don't like the word PTSD.
The audience is, your boot camp in the military was nothing like Agape. And
no, boot camp was easier.
Boot camp was easier in the military than it was at Agape. And you have PTSD from a boarding school, from Agape boarding school versus the boot camp in the military. Yeah. That's what
and I don't necessarily like the word PTSD, but I was diagnosed from a doctor. To me, it's just something that's going to be a part of me, and we're going to have to learn how to deal with it, figure it out, right? It's not bad anymore. I do have nightmares on occasion, more or less because I've been talking about it.
Sure.
the last 3 months, and like
Sure.
resurfacing and redigging all these stories up. And I don't even tell the bad stories. I just tell, I mean, they're bad, but they're just the lesser of the stories because it's easier for me to talk about it. It's hard to talk about the times I watched kids try to kill themselves or cut their wrist open or hang from a neck, right? Like I don't like talking about those stories because it brings up really dark memories. So those are the stuff that we deal with. So we're trying to get the kids at least on the track of starting the process of healing to de-brainwash and get them back to reality, the best way we can.
That's wonderful that you're doing that. Wonderful. And I understand that you have a book that you're thinking about writing about your story. I'm excited about that.
So I don't have a title for it. I do have the chapters formed, how I'm going to start it, then the middle, and then the ending. I actually finished one chapter or 2 chapters now. I just don't know what I'm going to call it that week. Oh, the second bill, I wanted to say that was amended and revised, is going to be a non-restraint bill for public school systems. And I believe they're going to include religious reform schools or religious boarding schools into that.
Fantastic.
Bill. So I don't know much about it yet, but I'm hoping that all goes through. The governor's on our side, state legislators, everybody's on board that there's a problem and something needs to be done to fix it.
And this should be a no-brainer. We should separate religious schools from public schools. It should be across the board. You cannot abuse children, whether it's religious related or non-religious related.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, parents lose the rights of their kids when they beat them, right?
I'm sorry?
I said parents lose the rights to their kids when they get caught abusing them and beating them. Why should the schools be any different? So in a public high school, if a student gets restrained and has to be restrained, one is because he was an immediate threat to himself or someone else, but 2, they hand that over to the police and the police do an investigation and they determine whether it was justified or not justified. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
In these religious schools, they can do whatever they want. Nobody's going to do an investigation. If they do, and actually, Cedar County Sheriff's Office has a former staff member working on their department, and the staff member, another staff member besides the one that's been speaking out publicly, got in hold of me and told me that that particular deputy has went into the school and taught how to do like restraint techniques that don't leave marks. And then they've also went out and taught them how to write reports properly to where the staff members aren't the ones being incriminated. So that's why if you pick up any write-up or any report, it's always going to be the student was that wrong. And so that came from a staff member's mouth that worked there that went on to move. And it wasn't James. It was a different one. And so, I mean, it runs pretty deep if you ask me. So, it's just bad. It's bad all the way around for that school and that county.
It's so corrupt. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, once I started digging in and realizing, sure, this granddaughter or niece was working for the dispatch. This one works in the jail. This one's a deputy. The deputies are on payroll for Agape. There's no way you can have a proper investigation when you're paying deputies to be security as their second job.
Exactly.
I don't care who you are.
Right.
And those are the ones that are responding to the incidents at the school. You know what I'm saying? There's no way it's proper. Now, I will say at least there's cops there. We never saw police officers unless we ran away.
And then they would just bring the boys back.
Yeah, they brought me right back.
That's awful. So what do you do when you make reports and in Cedar County, let's just say, where the abuse happens and everybody's in cahoots with everybody? Internal affairs, or do you go to another?
What I tell the recent students leaving, I tell them to call the highway patrol, make a report with the highway patrol.
Oh, that's a good idea.
They may still transfer you down to Cedar County, but at least you've got a paper trail.
Yep, that's good advice.
Yep, yeah. That's what I tell them.
All right, so to wrap this up, is there anything that you want to tell parents today about Agape Boarding School? What kind of advice would you give them if you're contemplating sending your child to one of these?
So the the most important advice I'd give any parents sending their kids to any school, whether it's Agape Boarding School or Provo Canyon or any other school across the country, I would say do your due diligence. Just because the website sounds good, that doesn't mean anything. I can pay good money to have a nice website and have the worst place. I would say do the research. Don't just look at Google reviews or all these other. Go to Yelp, go to YouTube. Do your research. There's lots of students talking from the 90s, from my era, from later on in 2000s to present day of the same type of abuse happening at Agape. And none of these people have met. Most of them don't know each other, but the same kind of talk, like the same kind of abuse is happening from the 90s to present day. So I would say do your due diligence. If you have questions, reach out to a student or somebody that isn't biased. I mean, maybe we are all biased. Students are biased, staffers are biased. Maybe get a third party to do research and have them give an opinion. I personally don't think any parent should send their kids to reform schools. I think they need to tighten up the discipline, not be scared of their kids, and keep them at home. Because the worst thing that could have happened to me was go to a boarding school and expect me to have a good relationship with my parents. Because to this day, I don't. I mean, there's a relationship, but I just keep the peace as best I can.
So it's superficial.
Yeah, it's superficial. The boarding school doesn't fix your relationship.
And to me, when it's superficial, that's not a relationship.
No, it's not.
I hate to see it. It's just you're just seeing a body.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you're gonna go ahead and send your kids away anyways, then you need to figure out why can't I talk to the kid for 30 days right off the bat? Why is his letters being monitored? Why is his phone calls being listened to? Why did they hang up on the phone calls? Like, you need to figure out why you can't have full communication with your child or your daughter. In my opinion, if you're going to send your kid away, then you should be able to contact him at any given moment, whenever is needed, to check on him or stop in and look. Look for the red flags. Abuse is everywhere. You can see it. If you go to Agape, you'll hear it, and they'll just sugarcoat it to make it sound like it's not, but it's still abuse. So the due diligence is the best. And then secondly, don't send your kids to Agape.
Thank you so much. And I really feel that your experience as a child has definitely molded into who you are today. And this is definitely your mission. I feel that because you've gone through all this hardship, really turned it into something that's going to make some serious changes.
And that's our plan. Our plan is, I know other people want the school shut down and this and that. Sure, that'd be great. But my goal is for it to not restart somewhere else. So if we can get laws implemented in like we are in Missouri, like in North Carolina, then that leaves, well, I can't go to North Carolina because now they have laws. And so they're either going to comply with the rules or they're not, and then they're going to be shut down. So that's my goal.
We need to make a federal
laws.
And Senator Gelser, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Senator Gelser, and she's in Oregon. She has a really great model plan that could easily go federal if we can just duplicate.
Yeah. So I have emailed my senators in New Mexico all of the testimonies and all of the news articles and all of the YouTube links. That way they can do research and start seeing a problem. I don't know if they'll ever listen to them or respond, but all I can do is keep bothering them. So
awesome. Well, keep bothering them.
The plan.
Do you foresee Agape's staff being prosecuted?
I think that enough stories are coming out and that are even being able to be collaborated that I think we're going to have a similar situation to Circle of Hope, to where somebody's going to look into it. The difference between Circle of Hope and Agape is they had proof. Maybe some of these guys have proof. I mean, that's the hard part, is being able to prove what was done. But maybe miracles happen all the time. So
Since things are tightening up a little bit, but then again, they'll probably be on their best behavior. If they would just take a kid out, take 10 kids out, take 20 kids out right now and check their bodies, I'm sure they would find bruises.
I'm sure that they'll find bruises. I'm sure the students would talk if they knew they weren't going to be in trouble.
If they could just take them out of the compound.
Yeah, exactly. And get them to a safe spot, right, where they know, what's going to be said and nothing's going to be passed back on. And I do think we do have a big thing dropping at the end of January. That's going to be huge. So when that drops, I think the pressure is really going to be turned up because then the entire nation is going to know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Pieces of Victory, and telling your story. I really appreciate you, and I so appreciate your speech that you gave at the rally. It really touched my heart. Really,
well, I'm glad I was able to do that. I don't know what came of me, but I guess I found out I have a new talent. I can talk in front of a crowd impromptu. So
yes, and that was the best because you just spoke from your heart, and
that's how I try to be. That's how I try to live my life every day, is genuine and passionate.
There was so much passion in that speech. It brought me to tears. It really did, and it takes a lot for me to.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't know. That week was just crazy. I just felt like I needed to say something to validate the girls, man. That's why I was there, for the girls, Circle of Hope girls, to show that, hey, I support you. Like, whatever was done to you, I'm here to love on you and hug you and tell you it's going to be okay. And so, like, to watch them go back to their school and drive through and walk through, I mean, it just did something to me. Like, I realized like how strong those ladies were to be able to face their demon right in the face. And I figured I could give a speech and try to, face mine. I'm real private normally, kind of in the shadows. But
I think that's going to change. It was
probably. I think it is too. But I think if I can get anything out of it, I just want people to be made aware, laws to change, and kids to be saved. Everybody talks about saving our kids, save the kids, save our kids, but they forget about the troubled teen industry and those kids. They're still kids.
Right.
There's no bad kid in the world. There's just kids with bad circumstances and products of our environments.
I wanted to reiterate that even if a child steals, if they do drugs, if it doesn't matter what kind of crime, it doesn't give an adult a right to abuse a child. It doesn't give these places to abuse our children at all, period, end of story.
Yeah, 100%. The kids need to be protected at all costs. They're our future. They're the next presidents. They're the next congressman, the next inventor, the next business owner. And if we're going to run around and just let kids get beat and abused all the time and make them feel like no one cares, then what kind of product, for lack of a better word, are we creating?
Exactly.
Not a good quality one. We want the best quality for our teenagers. We want them to be the future.
Exactly.
And so
it should be therapeutic. It should be positive reinforcement.
Yeah. This whole tough love theory doesn't work.
It's not working.
It didn't work for me.
Proof of that it is.
There's no such thing as tough love. There's love, and then there's abuse. And
I think we are the way that we are because we made choices, and we are this way in spite of the fact that that they did this to us.
Exactly. We chose to be better than them. We chose to be productive member of our societies. And we chose to break the chain. Like, I'm not going to go beat other people because I was mistreated and abused. I want to show teenagers in my church and teenagers all over the country that I can love them and help them by love and compassion, not by putting hands on them, not by putting them through a wall. That does nothing for anybody. All it does is create another generation of hatred and angry people that does nothing to help someone. I don't believe in any of that. I believe that had somebody took the time to actually care and love for me and some of these other boys, things would have turned out differently. But instead, they had to mistreat us and abuse us, and now some of my friends are laying in the ground because of what happened, or they're in prison for the rest of their lives. And that's another reason why I speak out for the guys that can't talk anymore, that their voices are no longer here.
Oh, thank you so much, Colton. I appreciate you. You are such a good soul. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Do you have any other thoughts? Or?
No, I just want to say thank you for letting me come on it.
Oh.
Sorry it's been so long.
Oh, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. I have a lineup, as you can imagine.
I know you're busy.
I don't know. But
you're what we call as an OG in this world. So we hold you to the highest person. We talk so highly about you when we talk. So
you're so sweet.
We just need you to maybe be able to rest and let somebody else take it on for you. Because you've been working so hard and so long.
Sweet. Well, all of us put together, we're going to take him down.
Yep, and that's our goal. So, anyways, thank you for having me, Janine.
Thank you so much, Colton. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Colton, for being brave enough to tell your story of what really goes on behind closed doors in residential programs. Parents, if you are contemplating sending your child to a program because you feel that you are desperate and this is your last resort, please, I urge you to reconsider. There are other alternatives. SIA-now.org has the answers. James Swift with helpforteens.org, and also Janine Miller, myself, with piecesofvictory.com. I will tell you my testimony of what happened to me behind closed doors. If you have a 1% chance that this could happen to your child, why would you take that risk? My name is Janine Miller, and you are watching Pieces of Victory.
Bill 557 and 560. I attended Agape Boarding School from 2006 to 2010. April 20th, 2007, approximately about 11:30 at night, me and 3 other boys were drug out of the dorm and jumped by 4 staff members in the hallway because we were talking about taking over the school. It never happened. It didn't happen, but I didn't get restrained properly at all. I was punched in the face several times and then kicked in the ribs. A few months later, we had a kid attempt to hang himself in the bunk beds, tied his shoelaces and a bathrobe around his neck, knowing that in the morning when he didn't get out of bed, staff members going to walk through and dump his mattress, causing him to hang. And that's exactly what happened. I watched that man hang. And instead of getting him counseling, he was restrained for it. He never saw medical help or anything. I can go on and on for stories like this. I would like to say that I am a Christian and I work in a youth group. I spent 3.5 years in Missouri, and in that 3.5 years, I was beaten, assaulted, starved, and several other things. I've seen kids come in morbidly obese and without a doctor or any medical professional telling that person, hey, you need to be on a strict diet to lose weight. Staff members at Agape Boarding School decided that they were the doctor and said you need to be on salad diets and you're going to work out for 3 months until you lose enough weight till we deem you necessary to eat proper food and go to school. That's not right. I don't know if you know the name Cornelius Frederick. That kid died last year in North Dakota in a state-run facility where there is regulations. I don't know how a kid has not died in your state in these schools that exist, because I can list 3 schools: Masters Ranch, Legacy Boys Academy, Agape Boarding School, Circle of Hope, where I was abused by all 4 of those staff members that worked at Agape and eventually left and started their own school here. There are several accusations that have been pushed under by Cedar County, because they have a sheriff deputy that works on the county payroll and that pulls security at Agape Boarding School at nighttime. Several deputies actually that do that. You can't tell me that a proper investigation can be done when somebody else is paying them. That is not right. And there are a lot of other things. There should be no price limit on a child's life. We talk about save our kids, save them from slavery and prostitution rings. But in the state of Missouri right now, as we speak, at Agape Boarding School, there's 165 students that woke up an hour ago that are forced to stand on the wall, eat cereal, while other kids are eating pancakes. They're forced to go do physical workouts until they puke. They may even be getting restrained as we speak. And restraints are not like your CPS department lines it out to be. The restraints at Agape Boarding School result in kids getting picked up over the head and slammed into walls. I've seen kids put through walls. I've been put through a wall. Kids getting slammed on tile, concrete, and asphalt. So I'm here to ask for your support in this bill and to help save kids in our country. Starting in Missouri, and maybe later on we can do something nationwide. But thank you for hearing me, and thank you for allowing me to be here. Appreciate it.